Hey everybody, Red Diamonds Too Loyal back again with another video. Today we're reacting to another Anna horror stories. I was traumatized by a Murderous TikToker. Let's get into the video, guys. This video was once again requested. Story 1.
TikTok got to be pretty popular when I was still in high school. At first, I didn't really understand what all the fuss was about, but when I got my account and tried it out for myself, I realized it was actually very entertaining. I didn't make TikToks myself, but I liked following other people and watching their videos. Brad, my boyfriend at the time, was super obsessed with TikTok, way more than me. He posted TikToks all the time, and after a few months, he built up a pretty decent following. He began posting more and more often, and it became something he spent a ton of his time on. The videos started out pretty simple, just him hanging out with his friends and doing skateboard tricks. But as time went on, he felt like he had to start stepping up his content to keep his viewers interested. He started doing more and more risky stunts, like trying to ride a bicycle blindfolded, seeing how long one of his buddies could hold their breath underwater, and even throwing knives at a dartboard to see who could get the closest to a bullseye. I know that a lot of people who took part in these stunts for the
They would go crazy over TikTok, man. Like, just doing whatever they choose to do. They will pick the most craziest thing, all because they want the views.
TikToks were scared of getting hurt and didn't really want to do them, but it was hard to say no to Brad. He had a way of convincing everyone to go along with what he wanted to do. It was like his followers had given him a god
He's the
complex.
manipulator.
Plus, there was always the excitement of taking part in a video that was going to likely get at least 500,000 views. His first TikTok that actually caused someone pain was when he purchased the Black Reaper pepper and had his friend Robbie chew up and swallow the whole thing. Robbie was able to get the thing down, but after a few seconds, he went totally berserk. He was running around the house like a crazy person, doing anything he could to stop the burn. He was chugging milk and throwing up. I've never seen anyone throw up so violently. The pepper essentially burned his taste buds off, and he had no sense of taste even weeks.
Dude, burned his taste buds off? Like, burned his taste buds for good?
Later. The next person that got hurt by his crazy TikTok antics was his friend Kevin. The plan was to take part in the viral challenge called the Salt and Ice Challenge. This involves putting salt on an exposed part of the skin and holding a piece of ice against the salt for as long as the person can stand the pain.
No, oh my god, that gotta like sting and burn, right? Like, cause you know, like, if it's on a sensitive part of the skin, oh my god.
It was only minutes after Kevin had passed the salt against his skin that he began to wriggle around in pain. Still, he knew that Brad needed a good video, so he didn't remove the ice. He had been screaming for what felt like forever before he finally.
And he did that for his, oh, heck nah. Nobody can make me want to do that bad. I don't care, bro. I'm not hurting myself for nobody.
Finally could stand no more and removed the ice. I was shocked when I saw that his skin had become red and raw. He had to be taken to the hospital where he found out that the challenge had caused him to sustain third-degree burns. The affected skin will never look the same again.
Now, if your friend make you do that kind of stuff, your friend do not care about you, bro.
And then there was the matchstick prank. Basically, 3 of the guys put their hands down flat on a table with their fingers spread. Brad lit a match in between all of their fingers, and whoever could go the longest without picking up their own hand won. Of course, none of them wanted to look weak in front of an audience of millions, so they waited until the match literally burned their skin before raising their hands. That led to another trip to the hospital.
Wow.
After this incident, I spoke to Brad about his stunts. I felt like they were getting too dangerous, and it was making me really concerned and uncomfortable. I was afraid that someone was going to get really hurt. Some likes on a TikTok video were not worth the health and safety of one of our friends. Brad assured me everything was going to be fine, and he wouldn't take things too far. He went on to say that he was starting to make a good amount of money from his TikTok videos and would start giving everyone a cut for helping to make them. This will be a good thing for all of us, he told me. I wasn't convinced in the slightest. Just
So you would put your friends in danger all because you care about the views and money and stuff?
as I expected, the stunts didn't get any less intense. One of them was a beer challenge. He had managed to get several cases of beer from an older friend who followed him on TikTok. When his parents were out of town, the friend group went over to his house and they had a beer challenge. Robbie and Kevin both participated in this one. They were each given a case of beers, and the challenge was to see who could chug the most beers in 10 minutes. Robbie ended up winning. I lost count of how many beers he took down. After the challenge was over, he laid on the couch practically comatose. I was terrified that he had alcohol poisoning, but he pulled through. I was particularly upset about this challenge because we were all underage and could get in a lot of trouble if an adult found out.
Right.
I ended up leaving early that night, feeling annoyed and hurt. It was like I didn't even recognize who Brad had become.
It's time to break up with Brad.
Brad and I were having trouble within our relationship. Things had always been really good for us up until this whole TikTok thing came out. We were so happy and in love. Now I was sure that I was no longer his top priority. I had been replaced by TikTok. He spent less time with me, forgot important dates like anniversaries, and didn't even seem fully present when we had date nights. He was always checking his phone to see how many viewers he got on his latest video. It was always all he would
He got extremely obsessed.
talk about too. He never asked about my life or how I was doing. Eventually, it started to affect his performance at school. He had always been such a good student, but now all of a sudden he was failing tests and forgetting to turn in homework. I was starting to get legitimately worried that he wasn't going to graduate on time. His parents were bewildered. They couldn't understand what had happened and didn't know about the whole TikTok thing.
They didn't know about his TikTok?
My relationship with Brad got so bad that I was considering breaking up with him. I think he knew this because he ended up asking me out to dinner at my favorite Italian place. He brought me flowers and everything. I really appreciated the gesture. All through dinner, he didn't look at his phone once. He asked me about my classes and my family. I was really feeling like maybe he could change after all. When we finished dinner, we went out and got into his bright red Mustang, a gift from his parents for his 16th birthday. We sat in comfortable silence as he drove. Eventually, I noticed he wasn't going in the direction of my house. Wait, where are we going?
So where was he going? He was probably going somewhere crazy to do a TikTok video.
I asked. We're just gonna stop by Robbie's for a second, he told me in a nonchalant manner. Somehow I had a bad feeling that something seriously wrong was going to happen, but after such a nice dinner, I didn't want to ruin the mood by saying anything. When we got to Robbie's house, I noticed that he was already in his car, parked in the driveway. The engine started. Robbie also drove a Mustang, but his was blue. Brad got out of the car and talked to him for a few minutes before getting back to his own car and pulling away. "What's going on?" I asked, suspicion heavy in my voice. "We're just gonna do a little street racing," he said. Again, very nonchalantly. "No, Brad, please, that's not safe. I don't want to do this," I told him, filling with panic. "Do you really believe I would ever do anything to put you in danger?" he asked me. I didn't answer. "Everything will be fine. Just relax," he said. Brad pulled onto the highway, Robbie following close behind. The second we had merged onto the highway and there was an adequate distance between the two cars, Robbie put his foot on the gas and flew in front of us, taking off down the highway at a very high speed. Brad groaned and then increased his own speed. We were winding between cars and literally flying down the highway. Brad was doing everything possible to get ahead of Robbie. I looked on the dashboard and noticed that his dash cam was recording. I quickly put two and two together. "Is this for one of your stupid TikToks?" I asked him. He didn't respond. Instead, he pressed his foot further and further down on the gas pedal. I glanced at the speedometer and realized that Brad was going over 100 miles per hour. I began to freak out. "Please stop, Brad, please. There could be cops. We could get in trouble." I was begging now. I could hear it in my voice. My pleads fell upon deaf ears as Brad continued in his pursuit. He was cutting people off and we were getting honked at left and right. I kept waiting to see red and blue lights appear behind us, but they never came. I watched as the speedometer hit 120 miles per hour. Brad showed no signs of slowing down. "Please, you're going to kill us," I whimpered, tears falling down my face. I could barely stand to look at the road. I heard Brad take a sudden intake of breath and I quickly saw why. A minivan ahead of us had suddenly changed lanes. Brad slammed on the brakes, causing me to lurch forward. He wasn't fast enough. I knew that with certainty. "Oh God," I cried out before we smashed straight into the back of the minivan. The car flipped in the air and rolled at least 3 times. Glass shattered and fell down on us. The airbags went off, smacking me right in the face, and then everything went dark.
Wow.
When I woke up, I was hanging upside down, my seatbelt holding me in place. I was trapped in the vehicle and couldn't see much. I glanced over at Brad and he was unconscious,
Risking your life for a TikTok. For a TikTok.
blood dripping from cuts on his head and coming out of his mouth. There were shards of glass sticking out of his skull. Brad, can you hear me?" I asked him. He didn't respond. "Oh, please wake up.
He
Please
might be
don't
dead.
be dead," I said, tears streaming down my face. He looked very pale and wasn't moving at all. "Help! Help! Please, somebody help!" I began screaming at the top of my lungs. I began taking inventory of my injuries. I knew I was pretty cut up, especially around my face, and I could see a particularly large shard of glass sticking out of my thigh. It had cut through my jeans. With a trembling hand, I grabbed it and threw it to the side. The pain ripped through me like a knife. I could move my head so my neck wasn't broken, and my arms seemed okay, but I couldn't feel one of my legs. I definitely had some broken ribs too because it hurt when I took a breath. Why weren't people coming for help? How long had we been here? Suddenly, I heard a man's voice and he was poking his head through one of the broken windows. His eyes grew big when he saw me. "Miss, can you hear me? Don't worry, we're going to get you help. The paramedics are on the way. Stay with me, okay?" He reassured me. "I think my boyfriend is dead," I said, sobbing. "Don't worry, help is on the way. Try not to move around too much." My eyelids were growing heavy. All I wanted to do was go to sleep, but the man kept urging me to stay awake. "Please, miss, you need to stay awake. You need..."
See, and I've always wondered why when people get hurt or get a gunshot or some way hurt in a car accident or whatever, why do it make you feel sleepy? And I want to say maybe because you might be losing blood and that makes you just automatically start wanting to doze off, but what if you can't help it and you just doze off and you can't stay awake?
Need to stay conscious. I could hear the sounds of sirens in the distance. The man was telling the truth. Help was on the way. I lost my battle against my droopy eyelids, and everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, completely alone. It was dark outside, but my room was well lit by blinking machines that beep repeatedly. Why was I here? I struggled to remember. Was this just a bad dream? Suddenly, all the memories of the crash hit me at once, and I sat up straight, gasping for air. A nurse must have heard me because she came running into my room and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, everything is okay. You're in the hospital," she told me in a kind, friendly voice. "Is Brad dead?" I asked her hesitantly. "Oh no, dear. Brad had to have surgery for some internal bleeding, but he is stable. He was in a lot worse shape than you when he came in."
His friend died. Well, I don't even know if the friend got in a car accident.
"But he's expected to make a full recovery," she told me in a cheery voice. I paused as I processed this information. Finally, I asked, "What kind of shape am I in?" I was scared to hear her response. She looked at me sympathetically before saying, "Well, you do have a broken leg," she began. I looked down at my leg and saw that it was in a large brace. "And a couple of broken ribs, but don't worry, those will heal quickly." "Is that all?" I asked. "You had some lacerations caused from the shards of glass, but none serious enough to require stitches. You'll be just fine, dear," she told me as she adjusted the IV that had been inserted into my veins. Over the course of the next couple of days, I had a lot of visitors. My parents stayed as long as the nursing staff would let them, and my friends brought me surprises like candy and flowers. A few times I asked to see Brad, but I was always told no. No one would answer any of my questions about what had happened to the people.
Wait, why she can't see Brad though? Why she
in the
can't see
minivan.
him?
Were they okay? Everyone just kept telling me that I needed to focus on my own recovery, and we would talk about the details of the
Or they probably just don't want her to around Brad because Brad was the cause of the accident.
crash later. I knew that was a bad sign. On the third day that I was in the hospital, a police officer entered my room. My mother was following close behind him with an angry expression on her face. "I told you she needs rest," she told him in an icy voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this can wait no longer," the officer told her, his voice firm. Finally, my mom gave in. She stomped out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The officer took a seat right next to my hospital bed. "How are you feeling?" he asked me, studying my face closely. "I've definitely been better," I told him, and he nodded thoughtfully. "I know it's not something that's easy to talk about, but what I need you to do is describe to me exactly, with as much detail as possible, what you remember of the events leading up to the crash," he said in a calm voice. It all started coming out of me at once. It was like I had been holding it in so much for such a long time. I told the officer everything, from Brad's obsession with TikTok to the increasingly dangerous stunts. I told him that I had tried to get Brad to cool it with the stunts, and I thought he had agreed to do so. I explained that I hadn't known that Brad had intended to street race when I first got in his car, and I had warned him to lower his speed, but he refused. I described how the minivan had changed lanes and how Brad had tried to slow down, but he couldn't do it in time. When I finished talking, I was slightly out of breath. "Thank you very much. You have been incredibly helpful. I wish you the best with your recovery," the officer said. He had been writing everything I said down into a small notebook. He stood up to leave, but before he could, I asked him, "Officer, how much trouble is Brad in?" The officer looked at me with a confused
Major trouble, I would think.
expression on his face. "Has no one told you?"
What?
He asked me in a soft voice. My heart
He
felt
died,
like it dropped
didn't he?
into my stomach. I shook my head no.
He
The
died.
officer let out a long sigh before he eventually sat back down. He scooted his chair close to my bed, and in a soft voice he said, "Unfortunately, the vehicle you struck contained a pregnant mother and her 2 children. All 3 of them are now dead." I felt like my throat was closing up and I could barely.
So he just killed a pregnant mother and her 3. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow, that is crazy.
breathe. The officer put a comforting hand on my arm. "Don't blame yourself. There is no one to blame for all of this but Brad," he said. He then stood up quickly and left the room. My sobs started the second the door slammed shut behind him.
Brad
I
going to
couldn't
jail.
believe it. Brad was the reason that 3 people and an unborn child were dead. I was released from the hospital after a week and got to go home. After Brad was discharged from the hospital, he was put into police custody. After a brutal trial, he ended up getting sentenced to 70 years in prison for his reckless behavior. It was
Dang, how one dumb decision can mess up your whole life. 70 years in prison, dude. Life wasted.
pretty much a life sentence.
Wow. Story 2.
When the COVID-19 pandemic hit its high point in the spring of 2020, I went home from college to live at my parents' house. No one knew what was going to happen, but it wasn't looking good. Thankfully, my mom had been able to stock up on some essentials before quarantine hit, so my family and I would have enough to eat. The days quickly became incredibly dull. I would spend a few hours in Zoom class every day and would turn my homework in online, but after that, the rest of my day was free. It was fun at first, having so much free time, but the excitement didn't last long. As the months went by, I grew tired of being stuck inside. I couldn't see friends, couldn't go out to eat, I couldn't even go to Starbucks and get work done on my computer. All of my friends kept messaging in the group chat about this app called TikTok. It had been around for a while, but didn't start getting really popular until the quarantine. After my friends urged me over and over again to make an account, I eventually gave in and did so. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the app. There were so many fun creators, and I could spend hours just scrolling through the videos.
So what, this girl about to get obsessed with TikTok?
Some of my favorite TikToks to watch were the day in the lifestyle videos. They seemed easy enough to film, so I decided to start making some myself. It was mostly just for my own sake, so I could have some videos to look back upon and remember what life was really like during the pandemic. My videos were pretty simple. They just documented things like my workout routine, my meals, and anything exciting I did on a day-to-day basis. Before long, I had a decent amount of followers. On one exceptionally gorgeous summer day, I decided to go down to the beach, which was an easy walking distance away from my parents' house. I packed a lunch and a book to read while I was there. When I got there, I found a secluded place to set up my chair. It was a decent distance from any other people. After reading for a while, I decided to take a quick stroll by the ocean so I could get some footage for a TikTok. I was so immersed in getting the perfect clip that I barely noticed when a tall guy suddenly appeared right beside me. "What are you up to?" he asked. I jumped, startled by his sudden presence.
Dang, he came out of nowhere?
I was just filming a TikTok, I told him. He looked to be around my age and was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, despite the warm summer weather. You're awfully cute. Any way I could score your phone number? He asked, a sly smile on his face. I was so annoyed. I wanted to have a peaceful day alone and had
So did she say no?
no interest in being hit on. You know what? I actually have a boyfriend, I told him. Oh yeah? What's his name? The guy asked me. I said the first name.
I don't like when guys do that. If a girl tell you that they got a boyfriend, alright, leave him alone. You know what I'm saying? Don't be like, okay, what's his name? Why? You don't need to know. Like, it's not important. The fact is that you can't have me, so get out of my face.
That came to me. Leonardo. The guy looked at me suspiciously. As in, DiCaprio? He asked. I didn't answer, but instead turned to head back to my stuff to pack up and go home. This guy clearly wasn't getting the message that I wasn't interested. I was folding up my beach chair when all of a sudden the guy showed up right behind me and grabbed me by my wrist. About that number? He said forcefully. I was annoyed but didn't want to cause a scene, so I gave the man a fake number. He seemed to be satisfied and finally left me alone. I packed up my stuff and headed home. That night while I was lying in bed, I put together some footage I had taken that day and posted a TikTok. Within seconds, someone had commented on it. Why did you give me a fake number? The comment read. What the heck? I thought to myself. I clicked on the username, but their profile was private. There was no way this could be the same guy from the beach. Could it? I blocked the account and then put my phone down as I got ready for bed. When I checked my phone again, I was surprised to see that a number I didn't recognize had called me. Out of curiosity, I decided to call the number back to see who it was. The person picked up on the first ring. You think you're really sly, huh? Giving me a fake number and all? You're not as pretty as you think you are. I recognized the voice immediately. It was the guy from the beach. How did you get this number? I asked, my voice angry. Wouldn't you just like to know? The man said, before letting out a horrific, evil laugh. I'm not scared of you, you know, I told him, even though my voice shook a little. Yes, you are, the man said, his voice scarily quiet.
You gonna say yes, you are?
I can see fear on your face. What do you mean you can see me? I asked, my heart beating into my chest. I peered out my bedroom window and gasped as I saw a tall, dark figure standing in the front yard of my parents' house, staring at me. He was wearing a terrifying skeleton mask and his head was tilted up towards my window. In his hands was a long knife with what appeared to be blood dripping from it. I hung up the phone abruptly and pulled my curtains closed as fast as I could and raced downstairs to tell my parents. They were cuddled up on the couch watching a scary movie. In between sobs, I explained that a guy was stalking me and he was standing outside our house right now. They both leapt up from the couch. My mom dialed 911 while my dad went out to the garage to get his baseball bat. I was begging and pleading for him to not go outside, but he insisted. He was too angry to argue with. The police arrived while my dad was still checking our property. Together, they spent the next hours searching for the man who had threatened me, but they found no sign of him. The next day, they attempted to track the phone number that he had called me from, but it was traced only to an old burner phone that had been tossed into the trash. There were no further leads. A few months have gone by and I haven't heard from him again, but just knowing that he is still out there makes me scared for my life. Wherever you are tonight, be safe and sleep tight.
Wow. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned. I'll be back with more videos and I'm out.